maybe what I'll do is I'll introduce myself and tell you what I want to tell you, and then I'm going to give them each a chance to introduce themselves and tell you whatever they want to tell you, and then we'll give you a chance to ask whatever questions you might have about the process. And I'm even willing to step out of the room if you want to have some frank discussion about some of the job duties and responsibilities after I leave. That would be fine. And I'm sure they would all be happy to talk to you. I graduated this law school in 1988. It seems like a long time ago to me. And it wasn't in this fancy building. We were just talking about that. It was over across the campus in that old building over there. And I became a judge 15 years ago. I've now been a judge for 15 years. I spent 19 years in a variety of private practice areas. I did a fair amount of commercial bankruptcy work. I did some divorce stuff. I did some municipal law. My career took a lot of different paths. I never thought I was actually going to be a lawyer when I was in college. It wasn't what I thought I was going to do. I thought I was going to be a forester. Frankly, my undergraduate degree was in natural resources management, and I went to move to Oregon during the spotted owl controversy and litigation, and realized nobody's hiring anybody who knows a lot about even age or uneven age management of hardwoods. They were doing even age management of softwoods here, but more importantly, nobody was hiring anybody because there just was all this litigation and forest policy was being made in the courts. So I decided I'd go to law school and I will influence forest policy. I have never done any forest policy litigation whatsoever in my entire career. Did some water law, but just not very much. That's just a long-winded way of saying you may have expectations right now of what you're going to do, but life is interesting and there's lots of opportunities. One of the nicest things about having a law degree is it opens lots of doors to you. And take advantage of the opportunities that present. You don't even have to practice law. You can go out and do something else. You can use your skills and you're getting here to do all kinds of wonderful things. And it's a powerful tool that you're getting from getting a law degree. So use it in some way that is good. I, as I mentioned, had one of the things I never did, and I wish I had done, frankly, has been a clerkship or an externship with the courts. I think there are numerous advantages to it. Anybody who knows me knows I love trial stuff. I love, I'm begging for trials. I'm down at the PJ's desk asking, can I get a trial today? The more trials. My best days are jury number one is deliberating and jury number two is getting selected. That's what I live for, is that kind of pace. And I like being involved in trials. I like watching trials. I like the whole gestalt of a trial. And one of the things that I kind of noticed over and over again is, I'll say for myself, and then I'll go back to what I noticed. I was always terrified when I did a trial, right? Until I got started, I was totally terrified. And even then, sometimes I would be terrified. And I remember the first time I ever appeared in a courtroom wasn't for a trial, it was just for some stupid docket where it was a mass call, report, do a show cause kind of docket. And the judge berated me for not following his instructions on how to introduce myself. I had to introduce my client and then myself, and I'd done it backwards, and and he made a point of, in front of everybody else, making a lesson of it. One of the things that I knew I was terrified, I just was. One of the things I've noticed about people who do the clerkship program is they feel much more comfortable in a courtroom. So if you are interested in being a litigator, or thinking about possibly being a litigator, it's a unique opportunity to watch other people litigate cases and do trial work. And we are a court of general jurisdiction. We do everything, right? We do everything from traffic tickets to aggravated murder on the criminal side of the world. We'll do everything from small claims court to multi-million-dollar litigation against corporations or entities, and let's stop the government from doing X or Y or Z, injunctions, all kinds of things. So you get a wide variety of stuff, and we are busy. It is not like some other courts of general jurisdiction or limited jurisdiction where they've got a lot of time to think about things. We're busy. Every week, we've got tons of cases going out every week. There's a lot of opportunity. So there's a lot of opportunity to take a look at the process. And one of the things that I think is reassuring is, well, you'll see some really good lawyers if you come to work for us, and you'll see some not so good lawyers, okay? And some of those not so good lawyers might make you feel better about how you might conduct yourself in the courtroom, and a little bit more reassured and a little bit less worried about making a mistake when you're there. And some of the really good lawyers will inspire you to follow their lead, or to figure out how I want to be that good someday. I mean, I sit there sometimes and I watch lawyers who are way better than I was, and I go, wow, you know, this is amazing. This is art right here. You know, this is the skill of persuasion here. You're seeing it right in front of your eyes. So it's an opportunity to do that. So I would, and I think in the long run, that makes those people who've gone through the clerkship program better trial lawyers when they show up, because they're comfortable with it. The other thing that you get out of the program is you're going to demystify judges, okay? You're going to find out that we're just average people who are doing the best we can every single day to make decisions based on the information that you provide. And that will make it easier for you to be in the courtroom. You also get the better appreciation of the different roles the different players have in the courtroom. Because frankly, one of the best things that you can do in managing a practice in the community is get along with the staff. You know, the staff people are the folks who get things done for you. You know, judges make decisions about cases, but you want to get something scheduled, you want to get something moved, you want to get something, you know, a special favor to get your thing expedited. The staff are the folks who are going to help you do that. If you need help with, you know, getting a client from point A to point B, the staff are the people who are going to help you do that. So it gives you a sort of opportunity to see what all those players are, what their roles are, and frankly, it makes it maybe a little easier if you're going to stay in that community to have some idea of how things work. So that's what I think are the two biggest benefits of doing this. I'll let these guys talk about that in just a minute. I want to briefly go over the process with you. All right. So every year, our clerkships are a one-year gig. They are, we hire people, there's 15 judges in our court, and we hire 15 clerks. The clerks are, hiring happens as sort of like a mass interview, so you all apply by a deadline, and I believe the deadline is Monday, December 5th at 5 p.m. So I've got a little handout to tell you that. And then we will interview some of the people who submit those applications. Just because you're not subject to the mass interview doesn't mean you're necessarily out of the running, okay? Any judge can interview any applicant. It's just that certain people, if enough people say, hey, I'm interested in interviewing that person, we'll bring them to a mass interview. During COVID, that mass interview was, you were in a room somewhere on a video screen, and we were all on video screens, and it was a little easier in some ways. Before COVID, and hopefully it'll be back to that now, well, it's in person. So you're in a room with 15 judges, and you're sitting at the end of the table, and we're all sitting around you asking you questions, and you have 5 minutes. And it's not a lot of time. It's bam, slam, bam, thank you, ma'am, kind of sense of here's who you are. It just gives us a little glimpse into who you are as a person, okay? It's not intended to be a replacement for an interview, long term. And then we hire in order of seniority. So the most senior judge is Judge Vogt, who Ms. Malloy works for, will go first. She'll interview whichever candidate she wants to. Some of them will be the people who showed up at the interviews, and some will be the people who did not show up at the interviews and were just otherwise on the list. She'll interview those folks, and then she'll make her decision. And then she'll offer the job to somebody. After she's done, it'll go to the next most senior judge, which is me, and I'll do that process, and I'll continue through that process until all 15 judges are hired. Only rule we have about that is if you get offered a job by a more senior judge, you can't pass it up for an opportunity to work for a more junior judge, okay? Because if you pass it up, you're out of the running. You're done. So you can't really necessarily pick who your judge is going to be. And that's just one of this way it is, okay? The judges, we all have different assignments every year. That changes. I'm right now the chief criminal judge and have been for the last 5 years. I don't know if that's going to continue. But your judge's assignment doesn't necessarily mean that's all you're going to do. All right, there's a couple exceptions to that. If you are assigned to a judge who works at juvenile court, that's in a separate facility. They do all day, every day juvenile matters. And if that's an interest of yours, certainly that's an opportunity for you to go pursue. And there's some people who are really interested in doing juvenile law, and that's a great opportunity. You know, the judges who do that, we're really looking for people who are interested in that, because that's what they do all day, every day. There's one judge who does a lot of the behavioral health stuff, the drug court, mental health court, those kinds of things. There's more problem-solving courts is the phrase that people like to use. That is a lot of that person's time as well, because that's pretty much a 5-day-a-week docket. Everybody else has an assignment that is mostly in the morning, and then, so for between 8:30 and 10 o'clock, and then they're available for a trial call. And we assign trials out of mass trial calendar call on Tuesday morning. Everybody shows up, all the trials that are ready to go, scheduled for that day. The presiding judge goes out there and finds out who's ready to go, and bing, 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 bing. So sometimes you don't know. Occasionally cases get pre-assigned. If they're more complicated, you'll have a little more opportunity to work through that case with the judge. The one thing that's a little bit different about the circuit court than the circuit court clerkship, back to the clerkship thing, is that when I became a judge, I had this imagination of my clerk and I spending hours at night, leaning over the books, looking through things and writing opinions, and we're going to debate the law with one another. We occasionally get to talk about the law and how it should work, and we share work, and I try to give my clerks an opportunity to write. But a lot of the job is actually really just shepherding people in and out of the courtroom, getting the paperwork done, and making sure the paperwork flows to the right place, that things get scheduled, that minutes get made, that recordings. We don't have court reporters anymore, so part of it is just running the FTR system, the recording system that records everything that happened in the courtroom and making minutes of what happened. The logs are important. Handling all the exhibits and making sure they're secured and preserved for appellate purposes. And then a lot of the job is that kind of a stuff, which means it's not quite the same thing as you might envision in where with a federal clerkship, I think you're going to be spent a lot of time writing and things like that. You're going to spend a lot less time in the courtroom. So I think our job is way more fun because you're going to see way more stuff and way more of the human condition. But that's just my plug for the job. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to let these guys talk. I don't know which order you guys want to do them in. I got her wired in first, so she's going to start.
Okay, great.
And she works for me, by the way, so I'm taking notes.
Yeah, good. This is recorded. Hi, Molly. I know some of you, as you just found out, I'm clerking for Judge Zennaché. When I was here at UO, I did a lot of public interest law kind of things. And it was only my last year through the DV clinic where I realized I'm more interested in trial, but I realized I had no experience in trial beyond 2 hearings, and it was terrifying. And so I think that was the main reason I pursued a clerkship, is so I could be in trial as much as possible and just see good and bad lawyering. Isaac, you want to introduce?
Yeah, so I'm Isaac. I graduated here spring of 2021. When I clerk for Judge Rigmaiden, and she does the treatment courts that Judge Zennaché was just mentioning earlier. So we do these problem-solving courts where people come in as a condition of their probation, and if they have charges that are related to drug use, for instance, they can enter into adult treatment court, and it's something where once they complete the program, all their charges get dropped, and they can enter back into society with a criminal record. When I was a student, I was so afraid of being in the courtroom. I actually just never wanted to do it. Well, I actually, after my 1L year, I did an externship with the circuit court. And I externed for Judge Conover, and that was the only time I felt like in law school where I didn't feel incredibly insecure about myself and my ability to be a lawyer. So all throughout law school, I knew that once I finished, I really, really knew I needed to do a clerkship, because I didn't have any lawyers in my family. In fact, I kind of applied to law school on a whim. I thought I was going to be a sports reporter the rest of my life. But I was working at the Register Guard, and I was working there when it got bought out twice. And I watched people who had worked for the paper for like 40 years just get handed a box and kicked out. And I was like, maybe I shouldn't stick with this career for the rest of my life. And I just applied for the LSAT on a whim. And I lacked a lot of direction in law school. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just knew I didn't want to do anything criminal. Just keep me away from criminal law, and the stakes were too high. And then I think it was day 3 on my clerkship, and I sat for an arraignment, and I was like, criminal defense, that's what I'm doing. Changed my mind just like that. So I mean, it really is a great way to kind of figure out, what do I like? What do I want to do? Are these things I'm afraid of, things I'm scared of for the right reasons? Am I just afraid because I haven't seen it before? And like Judge Zennaché said, it's just the opportunity, even though like I'm doing treatment court, and I'm kind of like on my own little island in a little bubble 5 days a week, I still get plenty of time to go and, like I caught the closing arguments for your past trial. I try to, it's a job where you kind of get as much out of it as you really want to. There's so much stuff to see and do around the courthouse at all time if you ever have free time, which is kind of hard to get sometimes. But if you ever do get it, you know, take advantage, because it's pretty interesting and a really unique experience to be a clerk and talk to a judge. I don't think there's really any point in time as a legal professional where you get to sit back and hang out with a judge and talk about a case and hear what they think about it, listen to what their thought process is, what do they actually care about. Was this thing that you heard earlier like important in the trial? Was that something that's going to make a difference in the outcome of this trial? You don't know. You can ask the judge. The judge thinks, actually, no, that had nothing to do with it. Like, that was actually a really excellent move by Attorney X, and it's just a really great learning opportunity. And there was nothing I found that kind of eliminated my fear of becoming a lawyer than just seeing it in person. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
I'm Katie. I recognize a lot of you. I know we all had some classes together. I just graduated last May. Before I went to law school, I was an accountant. I actually worked for U of O for about 8 years. I'm also a CPA, and I am not interested in practicing tax law. I am not interested in doing trusted estates. But the thing is I didn't know that when I went to law school. I was just going to law school to like help further my career at U of O. I thought it would help me move up to the next rung on the ladder. And I really didn't even know what a clerkship was. My summer opportunity fell through, and so in summer of 2021, I ended up clerking for Judge Carlson, who his clerk had left early. And after seeing trials in person and watching court live, I was hooked. Like you never know what's going to happen. Like they're doing jury selection in a trial up on the 4th floor today, and one of the jurors had a stroke as they were selecting. So luckily, the other members of the veneer, one was a CNA, one was a therapist, and one was a nurse. So they were able to get the other prospective juror medical attention before the EMTs came. You just never know what's going to happen. Like, people will admit to committing tax fraud in live court. They will admit to like, did they just say that they drive uninsured every single day and they haven't had a license in 20 years? Yep, that's what they said. Okay, thank you, Your Honor. And it's great. And, you know, you can ask the judge, I didn't understand what just happened. And my judge is really good. She'll sit down and say, okay, this is what I found important. This is what the attorney, you know, she was focusing on, but it would have been a lot more helpful if she had focused on this. And so, like, I'm learning from other people's mistakes. I get to say, oh, okay, Mr. So-and-so didn't do the best job at this. But now I know not to do that. And it's just from watching other people try, and maybe they did a great job and it's like, I'm gonna use that, and maybe they did not so great job and I'm never gonna do that. So if you think you wanna practice in Oregon, especially if you think you wanna practice in Lane County, even if you're not interested in trial work, the clerkship would be really, really helpful because you see how the paperwork flows. Like, there are some family law, like the best family law lawyer I've seen, I've only seen her in court once because she's so good. She doesn't come to court very often because her case is settled. But she clerked, and she knows where the paperwork goes. She knows, when I file this, these 3 things need to go with it. This is how it needs to get served. And that's the kind of stuff you learn in the clerkship. Like, you learn, oh, if you submit a motion, it has to have an order with it. You know, you don't just necessarily know that when you graduate in May. You're just not gonna magically know what has to go, what pieces of paper have to go with what. And the clerkship just, you learn, there's just so many things. I learn things every single day. And sometimes you don't think it's gonna be important, but a year later you're like, oh, I'm so glad I learned that. And it's just, like, I love my job. I love I'm like Judge Zennaché, I love live trials. My judge is a criminal judge, but we're doing domestic relations trial today. And, you know, I feel like I want to gouge my eyeball out, but I'm still learning stuff. You know, if what I want to do falls through, I know I have a fallback. I could probably practice family law. You know, maybe not my first choice, but I can do that. You know, and that's, you know, the things I'm learning now are helping, and it's just, you never know. And the judges are all really, if you don't understand something, even if it's not your judge, like, you can go, like, I think there were a couple days where my judge was out. You know, I can go to Judge Zennaché and ask him a question, or I can go to Judge McAlpin and ask him, and he'd be like, yeah, that's a good question. And if they don't know the answer, they'll be like, I bet Judge Conover knows the answer because he practiced that kind of law. And they're just really good about pointing you in the right direction to find the answers. And it's just great. And the clerkship's the only chance you get to see behind the curtain. There's this 1-year period of time where you're invited into this, like, secret club of the judicial staff. And then once that's over, you have to go back to being a regular attorney. You don't get to hang out with them, you know, because you know, there's a separation between judges and regular attorneys. So, like, there's just this small window you have to be part of that little in-group. And then you go on to do other things, and they keep being judges. So I would highly recommend this job to anyone.
I also wanted to note that this mass hire is not the only time to apply for this job. For instance, I applied for this job, like, for this December 5th deadline thing, and I did the mass interview. I didn't get a second interview. I worked with a vineyard after I graduated for a few months, and then checked on Simplicity, and one of the clerks was leaving for the DA's office, and a spot opened up, and I applied to that judge directly. So always keep a lookout, because you never know, something comes up, maybe a clerk needs to leave early, and then a job opens up, and you can come in. So I came in and filled in for the 6 months of her contract, and then I got hired on for another year after I finished that 6 months. So I get to be a clerk for a year and a half, which is a pretty sweet deal. Not a lot of people get to have that much time with a judge and, like, court staff. So just keep that in mind. If you don't get the job the first time around, like I did, maybe there's a second chance.
So, I do want to emphasize something they've said is, we as judges realize that you're not doing it for, $34.68 a month. That's, you're not $3,468 a month for what you pay. So it's not the pay, right? You're not doing it for the pay. You're doing it for the education experience. And we try very hard to make sure that you get that opportunity to talk to us. I think most of us are very good at having an open door to our clerks, or any clerk, frankly, and saying, hey, come on in and talk to us. We're busy people. If you work for the court, you'll find out that we got a lot to do. We're always going from one thing to the next, pretty much all the time. But if you take the time and say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about this or that, you'll get out of it what you put into it, because the judge will be more than happy to talk to you about it. Because frankly, we like talking about it. We don't get to talk to too many other people, and when I go home and I try to talk to my wife about this interesting thing that happened in the case, and she's like, well, thanks, honey, but, I don't want to hear about the child abuser or whatever, I don't want to know about this stuff, let's just keep your mouth here. So it is an opportunity to talk about the craft and the skill, and some of the stories. I mean, some of the human condition is an amazing thing, and our courts are courts of general jurisdiction. We deal with everything, like I said, and you'll hear stories, you'll be like, wow, who'd have thunk? And the human interest of it all is amazing. And then I want to point out that, what we do is really important. It has a significant impact on people's lives. We are directly impacting individuals' lives, families' lives, and communities' lives. We're deciding whether or not somebody goes to prison for a long period of time, whether or not somebody gets their kids, what kind of relationship do they have with their kids, whether or not they get to go to a particular class or a job, or all kinds of things, and that have significant impact. So you're not only getting a chance to learn about what that's like and observe lawyers doing their thing, you're also getting to be part of the process, and it's really an important process. It's every institution in our society is questioned these days, and the legal, we as lawyers, and you guys as lawyers, when we get out, we have a whole branch of the government that we're entitled to manage and run, and we need to do it with integrity and fairness and justice. And as a clerk, you're on the front line of that. You're the first person that everybody meets when they come to court. You set the tone, and you're the last person left. I come in, a big bang, 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 you're serving court, state of Oregon's now in session, Honorable so-and-so presiding, I say, please be seated, we go to our thing, and I get up, and they say, all rise, and I leave, and then you're left with the aftermath. You're left with, how to go to court, and you model that behavior. You're the front line of that, and you're dealing with those people, and it is a chance to be part of that process as well. It's not just, and it's an important part of it. You are the face of the court to a lot of people, so.
Judge, may I ask a question of the
Sure.
clerks? Piggybacking off of that, I wanted the clerks to talk about, I don't want to use the word networking because it's a professional establishment that you're in, but talk about the audience that you get to be around, the people that you get to see, the practice areas that they are, how you get to know them outside of court, when court's in recess, for example, transport, all the people that you work with. I wondered if you could talk about that.
I'll start off. The whole clerkship is a job interview. Whenever you're sitting in court on the record or even off the record, if you're in front of other attorneys, it's a job interview. Everyone's kind of looking at clerks as the next up-and-coming sort of lawyers that are going to be in our community. You get to get a lot of face time with a lot of attorneys in the community. You get a lot of face time with judges, and attorneys are going to be asking the judges, hey, who are the good clerks? Who are the ones that I need to be looking out for? It can be stressful, but if you're good at your job and you act right and you do everything that you're supposed to do and put on a good face, most people leave the clerkship with an opportunity a lot of them didn't even have to apply for. So
One thing you also learn who you don't want to work for. Because if an attorney comes in and they're rude to you as a clerk, or they're rude to Tiffany in the information booth, how do you think they're going to treat their new associate? I've seen, there's a really good criminal attorney in town. I saw the way that person treated someone who recently graduated that was just helping them out. And I was like, wow, now I know I would never want to work for that person. You see them because everyone pays attention to the judges. The judges are important. But not everyone thinks the clerks, we absolutely tell our judges what's going on. Like, this person was rude to me, or this person was rude to my judicial assistant. And maybe that makes a difference to the judge, maybe it doesn't, but it definitely makes a difference to how those people get helped. Like, if someone's rude to my judicial assistant, am I going to go out of my way to help them hook up a TV? Absolutely not, because they were rude to my judicial assistant. But, you know, I've also found, like, wow, that person was really nice. They were really nice to the unhoused person in arraignments. They didn't have to be nice. They just were nice. Like, so you find out who the really, like, actually nice people are. And, you know, you're dealing with the public. So some people don't have a high school education. You know, you see a broad swath of humanity in our job. You see very prominent people, and you see people that are just scraping by, and all the things that entails. You get to know all the transport deputies, like, and you know, apparently it's No Shave November, so they're all growing beards right now, even though they're not allowed to normally. You get to meet, you know, you see a lot of police officers in court. You see their investigators. You see family counselors. Social workers come in. Probation officers come in. Like, you get to meet, like, not just the lawyers. You get to meet their staff. You get to meet all these people that are out in the community. And you're just spending time with them, getting to know them, and it helps. If you don't know what you want to do, it helps you find out, like, ooh, that's not what I thought criminal defense would be. No, thank you. Or, ooh, I don't think I want to be a prosecutor because I can't get my brain about that. You know, it's just, I don't know.
You don't go to the jail anymore, right?
No.
We did get a tour there a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, the tour is cool. It's open to everyone. You can do it.
Yeah, they want to give jail tours. If anyone's interested, I can get the contact information of the person who wants to give jail tours. And it was interesting if you've never been to a correctional institution.
I think that was nice.
Do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, they covered a lot of it. But, I mean, yeah, I think it's not so much, I don't necessarily consider it a job interview, but I do think the way you value the job and the dignity that you treat people with will be reflected in your actions. And I think you can see how other people treat the courts and the people they work with. And I think that ties into the relationships of people in the building. It ties into relationships with people in the community, the other attorneys. I think you'll just meet tons of people and form tons of relationships, and you know, you'll see how that plays out. And like, even within the building, I think it's helpful to know if you need someone transported, who are you going to call, who are you going to work with. Those are like the moving cogs part of being a lawyer that you don't learn in law school, like how it all unfolds. So I mean, I think that's really helpful. And I also think there is some level of, like, you can see how they deal with their clients who are maybe more difficult, how they deal with public who are maybe more difficult, unexpected situations. And I think just seeing that unfold and how other people handle it can also be a valuable learning experience. But I don't really think there's too much to add. I think you guys can understand some of the common sense value of knowing all these people and relationships.
So I wouldn't ask this question, but I'm going to venture in here because one of the things I extract from my clerks is a promise that they won't leave before next August. Because my clerks generally get job offers. You know, they have offers from people. There are people trying to poach them, and sometimes we agree that I'm going to let them be poached. You know, we just let them go early, and we hire. Jessica up there worked for me last year as a fill-in for my clerk who got poached by somebody. But so, I mean, stuff happens, but you know, it is an opportunity for a lot of the bar to get the chance to know you a little bit and experience you, and you know, especially if there's somebody who has a practice a fair amount in front of the court and has a sense of who the different judges are. You know, that sometimes we'll come and we'll ask, hey, what do you think about so-and-so, or I'd like to hire a clerk or something like that. And I say, leave my clerk, get your hands off her, and leave her alone. You know, but that happens. So that's why I extract that promise or expect that expectation, is because it happens too often.
Are you fully back in person, or are you still partially remote? besides the jail?
We're still partially remote. We're mostly in person. We're doing some things remotely. You know, I'm hoping we'll get to be even more in person. We're doing a mixed bag. I mean, technology is helpful for some things. It makes it easier, lessens carbon footprints. We're trying not to transport as many people from prisons to court just to have them change their plea and then be hauled back. And we're trying to make it easier for lawyers to appear at hearings that are just non-evidentiary. We're just going to argue something and we're just going to have loud remote appearances and those kind of things. There are a few other things we're still doing remotely that I'm not sure why we're doing them remotely, and continue to do them, and they'll probably follow it as time moves on here. But we're in a people business, and frankly, the remote thing does not have the same, I didn't feel it had the same impact. You know, there's a way to process cases, but when you're deciding about who gets to raise the kids or what kind of relationship each parent's going to have with their children, you really need to look them in the face and tell them that. You know, they need to hear, and not just what the outcome of it is, but why, what you're thinking, so they maybe understand, because it's all about teachable moments from my perspective. I'm trying to help people, even if I'm sending somebody to prison for a long time, the reality is they're going to get out. They're going to, you know, I'm trying to motivate them in some way to make some changes in their lives so that they do take advantage of it, make those changes. So hopefully we won't be doing everything, and we'll be doing even less remotely. But see, technology does help some. It makes some things easier. You got a lawyer in Portland, you got one in Salem, and they want to appear on a motion for summary judgment. Why not? I can listen to them just as well by video than I can in my court. And I'm not going to teach them anything, right?
We had a sentencing where it was a manslaughter case. It was a car accident here, and 4 international students had been killed. And the family got to give their victim impact statements from India, and technology allowed us to have simultaneous translators. And the family was all able to, you know, tell the defendant how this car accident had impacted their lives. You know, and he ended up, it was four separate counts of manslaughter, and so he's going to be in prison for a very long time. But he got to hear from the family, you know, how, this person killed my only son. My son was supposed to help me. Now that I'm old, I don't have anyone to help me. And they were 4 bright engineering students that, you know, so you just, there's things like that are just tragic. And then there's things like Deputy so-and-so pulled defendant over and 5 dogs fell out of the car and pandemonium ensued. You know, so it's like you have these tragic things and then you have some really funny things happen too. And you just, if you like people and you like learning about life and hearing people's stories, it's a great job. And I've gotten 3 job offers since I've been here, but I gave my judge my word I would not leave early. And that's the answer I give. I say thank you for your interest, but I gave my judge my word that I would not leave early. And the other thing is if you don't pass the bar the first time, it's completely fine. My judge told me that in the job interview. She said, a lot of people don't pass the first time. You'll be here for a year. I mean, there's some jobs where you can't get them if you haven't passed the bar, or you can't keep them if you haven't passed the bar. So it's really, really important. I mean, I was a basket case stressing about bar exam study, you know, and you're going through this and you're like, oh my God, if I don't pass this horrible test, I'm never gonna get a job and I'm gonna starve to death. But if you have this clerkship, you're like, okay, I'm probably not gonna fail, but if I do, I'll still have something to eat, you know? So that's the other thing about the clerkship is you have this safety net of, if I don't pass, I can take it next time. And you can actually clerk for up to 2 years. One of my judges, former clerks, I think he just chose to stay an extra year because he wanted that extra year of experience. But so like if you need a couple extra times to take the bar, you can absolutely do that. And Like, a lot of people don't pass on the first try. And there's no shame in it, and it's absolutely okay if you need an extra time. No matter what the Barbary people tell you. Like, don't let them stress you out.
Have you got more questions?
Yeah, students, yes.
I do. Hi. My name's Tiffany, and you actually presided over my custody battle like 7 years ago.
Uh-oh.
And so, no, it was great. It was great. I just remember being so impressed by how much you thought about all of the different factors, and you really like got onto both of us for different things. I'm like, man, he's really neutral, and I really appreciate that. So it's really cool to be sitting here like talking to you in this context, having had that experience 7 years ago. So thank you for being here. And I guess my question is, what do you look for in a clerk when you're doing that like mass interview? Is it grades? Is it experience? I'm doing the DB clinic. I plan on doing the criminal defense clinic next year. Other than that, I don't have a lot of things on my resume experientially. Like, what do you look for?
I think the answer is different for every judge, okay? So I actually don't look for a whole lot out of the interview because it is only 5 minutes and it's a pressure cooker thing. So I'm more, that's more just sort of a, how do you handle pressure? I'm just observing how you handle pressure and the pressure you get this. And can you answer a question rather than, you want to tell me something that's not what the answer to the question is. You can make a joke along the way, that's always helpful too. But that's just a how do you handle pressure. My selection of clerks is more about, like Isaac, nobody in my family ever went to college, or went to law school, was a lawyer. I knew no lawyers. I'm the first person to go to college in my family, let alone graduate school. My dad never learned to read or write English, so I look for people, I try to look at other things. What is this person's interest? What's their background? Am I going to be helping this person? Are they interested? What are their career goals? And then a little, some other things, and then I interview people, and the interview part where we do the more in-depth interview, which is about an hour, and that's not even a lot of time either, right? They're making a decision about somebody based on an hour and 5 minutes of their time. I have a bunch of questions I ask that I want to know, kind of, have you thought about this job? Have you thought about the role? Have you thought about the role of the law in society? What are your interests? How do you get along? One of the things that we deal a lot with, Katie, mentioned that, I was going to say, I'm a miserable lawyer, but I always think of the clerks by their first name. So she mentioned that, you get exposed to all kinds of things, and part of what we deal with is there's a lot of secondhand trauma, all right? When you listen to some parent talk about the impact of the death of their child has had on their family, or a little kid testify about the sexual assault, or a woman talk about being sexually assaulted, you can't help but be impacted by that. And we need to, so part of what I'm asking people all over about is, how do you deal with trauma? How do you, and are you okay with the fact that other people deal with it differently? Because some people have to tell a joke, they have to laugh at it. It's not. So I'm looking for a variety of factors. That's a very long-winded answer, I'm sorry. But again, every judge is looking for something different. They're all going to be looking for something different. So do the best you can in the 5-minute pressure curve interview, but it's just, we all recognize that. I can't imagine sitting down in front of 15 judges and having 15 judges bombard you with questions. And some of them don't wait till you finish your answer to the first judge before they're asking you the next question. So, it's okay.
And if I might, Judge?
Sure.
I feel like with the interviews, it's more about each chambers has very different personalities and very different dockets. And so I think being yourself, your professional self, but to the extent possible, I don't think hiding who you are and what actually work style and what actually interests you is really a good fit, because you're with these people all day, every day for a year, and you can do that for an hour, but I don't think put yourself in a situation where for a year, like if you don't like criminal, like don't say you like criminal. There's plenty of other chambers that aren't doing primarily criminal. And I think just being yourself to the extent possible seems to align most people with like better fits for their personality.
And I don't know any judge that makes grades their number one consideration factor for who their clerks are. So if that was the case, I wouldn't stand a chance. So it's definitely a job that I would encourage you to apply for, even if you feel like maybe your grades aren't up to snuff.
I think they told us that they had people from all, top 25, middle 50, bottom 25. I think they said that we have people just all across. I think it's more about like if you're going to be a good fit, because you do spend a lot of time with your chambers. It wouldn't. You've got a couple great resources. Maddie and Jessica both did it over the summer. I know there's a couple more summer clerks wandering around, Grace and Ryan Leal. I mean, they were there all summer. You can get the dirt from them. Like, what's this judge like to work for? I will tell you the absolute truth, but they've had, because I was a summer clerk. It's being a summer clerk is this extra valuable thing because you get to go and like do this thing for a summer, and then you go back and you're like, oh, my classes make so much more sense now. Like taking criminal procedure after like helping out at arraignments, like the class made a lot more sense. Arraignments didn't make much sense last summer, I have to say. And the family law stuff last summer didn't make hardly any sense at all, but once I took my family law class, I was like, oh, that's what they're talking about. And so it was just, and you don't realize how much you're learning. Like, just the little things, like what's 35-day call? What happens at arraignments? Who's talking? What are you supposed to say when? Like, you don't know what you're learning until after you're like, oh yeah, I learned that thing, and that's really useful to know.
And it's so nice learning all this stuff with low stakes on your end and not being the one having to make the mistakes.
Yes.
Do all of the judges read the cover letters from everybody, or is there like a certain judge who kind of screens and then narrows?
So they all get sent out. What we get is, we used to get a notebook, but now we get PDFs of all of your materials that you submit, and they get sent out by administrators to all of the judges, and then we're asked to review them. I review them all. Some people review just parts of them, but and then we check off. We say, I'm interested in these people, and then if 3 or more or 4 or more, depending on how many people vote are interested, they'll get the top X number. I think you got checks, and you'll get that initial interview. But that doesn't mean you're off that judge's list. I mean, that judge might say, I'm really interested in this person but apparently not enough of my colleagues were, or they, something like that. So that happens all the time. But we all have an opportunity to review the materials, whether we all do or not, I can't say. I do. I don't really spend a lot of time on the writing example, I'll tell you right, at least not that initial cut, because for a writer, I think your writing samples are so edited so many times that it's really not a reflection of what it is that you're going to be doing for me, which you're not, we're a fast-paced kind of operation here. And the other thing is you don't do a whole lot of writing for me. This is not that valuable to me. I'm more interested in the cover letter and your resume. And frankly, one of the things I'm always interested in is what do you do when you're not at law school? What are your interests, what are your activities? We're kind of trying to get a sense of who is this person, how they're going to fit with our group, because we're going to work together very closely for review.
I was wondering if you want to go into probate or a certain section of the court, what is the best way to do that? Is it mentioned in your cover letter or in that 5-minute interview?
Either one of those is fine, you know, I think mentioning it as an interest of yours is somewhere along the line is worthy of doing. If you're not the probate judge, so I'm probably more, sometimes more interested in lawyers or applicants who are more interested in the kind of work I'm doing, if I'm doing that deep dive. If you're a treatment judge or a juvenile court judge, you want somebody who's interested in doing juvenile court, because the juvenile courts, you're gonna be over in the juvenile courthouse, it's a separate facility. You're gonna be doing juvenile stuff day in and out every day. And, you know, if that's an interest of yours, that those judges prefer people who are, that's an interest in, because that's mostly what you're gonna do. They do some other trials, I don't mean to say that's all exclusively what they do, but it's probably 90% of what they do. And you want someone who's interested. So probate's kind of one of those odd things, you know, where if you're really interested in probate, sure, you know, tell somebody. It doesn't hurt to say these are my interests. You know, it may not align with what the judge is looking for or the option you get. And again, you don't get to say, I'm going to wait for the probate judge to hire me. You know, if the first judge, the most senior judge says, hey, there's a job offer, you either take it or leave it.
The probate judge is fairly senior, though.
That's true. Third most senior one, right after me. Any other questions? Yeah.
What are, I mean, obviously, I think like the hours are going to be Monday through Friday, like work hours, but what is the flexibility like for people with families? Like if I got a call that my 7-year-old was sick, or like right now I've been getting text messages that her school lost power and she needs to be picked up, so I'm like trying to multitask that. Is there any kind of wiggle room? Or I mean, and I imagine if you have to leave, you kind of leave your judge hanging, so.
So there's some wiggle room, okay? That's one of the things about being my job. I try to schedule my doctor's appointments and things like that for noon before I come to work or after I go to work, because our dockets are pretty busy from the time we get there in the morning to the end of the day, and there's a lot to get done. That said, the clerks move around. If you have to leave for an emergency, someone will backfill and cover for you. You know, and stuff happens, and I think we're a pretty humane, you know, place to work. We're not gonna, if you've got somebody that takes you away every day, then probably someone's gonna have a little chat with you about, you know, hey, this is not functional. But, you know, a one-off like that, I gotta go get the kids, that's not gonna be a problem. I wanna leave every day at 2 o'clock because I want to pick my children up and take them from here to there every day. That may not work because at 2 o'clock we have a docket that we got to do, and I need to be there. But the one-offs, sure, that's not a problem.
Yeah. And we have a clerk like chat and stuff. Like I feel like when there's moments when you can't cover 2 things at once, which happens, people will come fill in for you or like can run something back for you. Like it's not like. There is also an internal like clerk community, I would say, on top of the existing clerk community. So it's not like you're necessarily in a silo by yourself.
And we even do that. I'm out of this form. Can someone slip me a stack of forms through the back door? And usually Isaac or, you know, somebody else is like, I'm on it, or on my way. Which door do you want me at? You know, and like, I mean, we have to move juries. Like you can't, one person cannot move 45 people through the courthouse. So like we have to like work together as a group. Like there were chats, you know, even the judicial assistants are like, I need a couple clerks to help me move 45 people to the 4th floor. And so, you know, they said, yeah, I have time. And so, you know, Lindsay and Colin ran up to do that this morning. And because Anna was stuck listening to the attorneys argue about a pretrial motion. And we're not exempt from overtime, so if you work extra hours, you accrue comp time. So like, and then you can take the comp time. Like last week, my judge left at noon, and I didn't have anything to do, so I'm like, sweet, I'm gonna use some of my comp time. And everybody was fine with that. Or, you know, my judge had something, she had a long appointment in the middle of the day. I'm gonna go take a long lunch, you know, no big deal. Or, you know, if we have a floating clerk too. Because, you know, sometimes you just don't have enough bodies. We have, Reza is our floating clerk, so he just helps out wherever we need it. And it's great. It's
It's a favorite meal.
yeah. Melissa's like, what, a floating clerk? I want one. And they just help, like, you need forms, you need help moving a jury, like, or, like, this morning, I don't know what was, I mean, there was something horrible happening on 7th, you know, so I could have texted another clerk and been like, can someone please cover my 8:30 hearing? I don't know what's going on, but I'm not gonna get there on time. That stuff, we're all human, we all have lives, so I know some of us have kids, some of us are empty nesters, which is awesome.
I guess we're 30-something.
We had a judge that, you know, her kid had to go to the hospital, and they just said, sorry, trial's not happening until tomorrow. Judge's kid had to go to the hospital. You know, judges are people too, so they understand.
Do you guys still do the clerk lunch?
No.
Yeah, COVID killed a lot of things, you know.
That was the best. All the clerks would gather down in the cafeteria, if it even exists anymore.
Not the cafeteria.
I don't think so.
That's just where we house jurors, before we take them upstairs.
That's sad.
So any more questions? Oh, yes, madam. Oh, here comes, watch out, watch out. This is a tough one.
Do you have to take the Oregon bar, or can you take any state bar?
We don't care.
You don't even have to take the bar for this job.
Katie took the Washington bar.
Washington, yeah.
The only problem is if you take, and actually your judge can swear you in, which I had my judge swear me in. It was very, like, my parents came and my partner came and they watched my judge swear me in my courtroom. It was very special. But we also had, you know, 4 clerks that left to go to the mass swearing in with Chief Justice Walters. And so that was cool too. I think it's more special to be sworn in by your judge, but.
And I have sworn in clerks who got past the Washington bar, because Washington is one of those states that will give an assignment to a judge here to swear in, so I've done that.
Some judges have married clerks.
Yeah.
I saw a bride in the courthouse the other day. I don't know who married her.
It's one of the funnest things is getting to do weddings. I used to do a lot of them. I haven't done very many lately. So one other thing I want to mention is we're going to also restart our externship program here. I don't know exactly when that's going to happen, but hopefully by the winter term, you guys fall, whatever, the spring term, whatever, spring term. So hopefully we'll be restarting that. And that's an opportunity to do sort of an externship. It's not quite the same thing as being a clerk because you don't, one, you can't do certain things that clerks can do, you're not allowed to do them. The other is it's often, it's one of those things where you get in, out of it, what you put into it. So if you're only there for, 12 hours a week, you don't get quite the same immersive experience as you would if you're there for 40 hours a week. So, but that's going to be starting to, and it'll be a little for you to get a little taste of what it might be like. Unfortunately, that's not going to start till after you guys, the deadline for applying for you guys is over, so. But you can always do both. I mean, that's, if you're like some of you are first years, you can always do the externship and then come back and do the clerkship. But a lot of, frankly, before COVID, that's how we got a lot of our clerks was they were people that had been externs and frankly, that's a way to try out for the job and for us to get a sense of who you are. And you get a sense of, am I interested? Is this, oh my God, we're crazy, or this is really fascinating. Involved, learn more about it.
And court's open. Like, you can come to court. It's a public building. Like, you can come and the courtroom's open. It's a public hearing. I mean, there's very few things that are not, the public's not allowed in. So you can come and sit in the back of the courtroom and watch arraignments or traffic trials, or I think we have 3 different jury trials that went out today. You can just come to court and sit there and watch.
And we're still streaming some things, some of us stream trials so you can watch a trial from your desk or parts of it. And and I don't know if the clerks do this, but they used to do this, or they would like, if somebody was doing a closing argument, it was somebody they expected to be good, they'd send each other an email, oh, you know, so-and-so's doing the closing argument in this case, and they'd all come and sit in the back and watch, you know, so you do get an opportunity to watch not just what your judge is doing, but what other judges are doing, and who those people are good at it. Nobody runs to see the people who are bad at it, so.
No, I think it's good. You should also see the bad people. It's worth doing the job to see,
Oh,
it lowers your bar a little bit.
The best.
Yeah, I agree, it's definitely worth seeing, because there's not all the crowd to come see you in somebody's club.
Well, yeah, it does boost your confidence. You're like, okay, I can do better than that guy.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us today for the board. Really appreciate it.